Swiss box.
Yeah, that's the branding.
Why do you call it Swiss box?
Here we go, we're live. Why do I call that Swiss box? That's a good question. Actually, Paul, I was looking for a name and I had this radio, the red one. And so that was red, like Switzerland. And I thought the Swiss is a good brand, you know? So I said Swiss box. I was also following another podcast. It was called the Squawk Box in England.
Oh, okay.
And I liked the name, and that's why. Welcome.
Oh, well, thank you.
Thank you to drop by Switzerland. Pour certaines personnes qui vont être déçues parce que cet entretien va être en anglais, this interview is going to be in English because I want to include you, Paul, and I don't think that you speak French
Not
properly.
that well, no.
So that's fine. On us, we are here also with Lamya Essemlali. You are president of Sea Shepherd France and founder too.
Yes.
So people understand now that we're going to talk about ocean protection and many other subjects of ecological importance. My English will come back after a while. Don't worry, guys. So why are you stopping by Switzerland, actually?
Well, we're giving a presentation here today. You have more details on this.
Yeah, we were doing a presentation in Unil in Lausanne. So
yeah,
we try when we move somewhere, we try to do as many things as possible. So yeah, it's the opportunity.
Yeah, your schedule is probably very, very busy also.
Yes, we don't rest much.
Thank you very much. So I'm going to check the technique, but it's going to be working. What is the most important issue now for the ocean? Because I think with all the crises there is in the world, like the wars, and there were COVID before, at least for me, because also in Switzerland we don't have ocean very close by, we tend to maybe lose sight of the importance of preserving our oceans. And so maybe we can put that back in the spotlight because you're here today. So what are the main issue we're facing now?
Well, first of all, you do have the ocean nearby. The entire planet is the ocean. So it's water in continuous circulation, sometimes in the sea, sometimes in the atmosphere, or locked up in ice, or in the cells of every plant and animal on the planet. Water in continuous motion. We're all connected to the ocean. So we are the ocean, no matter where you live on the planet. But when it comes to what is the most important or pressing issues, you really can't say that one thing is more important than others, because ecology is diversity, and diversity of problems, diversity of approaches. So we have to tackle things like, whaling, overfishing, the killing of dolphins, sealing, plastic pollution, climate change. There are so many problems. Now, the great thing about this is that the environmental movement is a diversity of approaches, a diversity of ideas. So this is being approached on many different levels by many different organizations. And what we try to focus on are stopping the killing of whales, the killing of dolphins, the killing of seals, and protecting life and diversity in the sea.
Yeah, and that's already quite a struggle. Yeah, thank you very much to remind us that everything is connected, obviously, and we are made, I think, 80% of water also ourselves. So we basically are oceans. I used to hear we are what we eat, but I've never heard that we are the ocean actually ourselves. So it's very interesting.
Well, the other thing that's really important to remember is that, and I say this all the time, if the ocean dies, we die. And what that means is that we don't live on this planet with the Dead Sea. And since 1950, there's been a 40% diminishment in phytoplankton in the ocean. And phytoplankton provides up to 70% of the oxygen in the air we breathe. And that phytoplankton is being diminished because of the diminishment of whales, dolphins, seabirds, and everything, which provide the nutrient base for the phytoplankton, the magnesium, the iron, the nitrogen. And so that's why you're seeing the steady diminishment of phytoplankton. If phytoplankton disappears from the sea, we all die. We don't live on this planet without phytoplankton. It is the foundation of all life. So we are totally dependent upon it.
That's simple. In Switzerland, I've heard that we are eating also a lot of fish, and not only from our lakes, but from the ocean. Is overfishing still and obviously a big issue?
If I may, I would go back to your first answer, which is also an answer to your second question about the threats on the ocean. When it comes to a scientific diagnostic on what is the biggest threat, the most urgent threat on the ocean today, it is overfishing. But as Paul said, there are many different threats, and it can be kind of overwhelming when you think that there is overfishing, there is plastic pollution, noise pollution, marine traffic, global warming, acidification of the ocean. I mean, you don't even know where to start. And when people ask me, so what can I do to have a big impact on the ocean? I think that all these issues are the consequence of one same root, which is the fact that we disconnected ourselves from the ocean, as we disconnected ourselves from the living world. As a species, we behave like crazy. I mean, like suicidal. Like we made ourselves orphans as a species, like by destroying the rest of the living world. And this has triggered so many mental illness. I mean, we are mentally and spiritually ill as a species. And because of that, we are doing all these horrible things to the ocean, to nature, to ourselves. I mean, look at the situation of the world today, what's happening. And this comes from a disconnection. And I think that what's powerful about Sea Shepherd, I mean, the original Sea Shepherd, the way Paul Watson founded it, right, is that you have people who devote their lives to protect whales, among other things, in a way that is very special. I mean, when you risk your life to protect a whale, you trigger some thinking in people's mind. It's inspiring. And it doesn't mean that everyone has to do it. It doesn't mean that this is the only way to be involved. But it's a way to wake up people, you know? And I think that's very special about Sea Shepherd. And when it comes to whales and dolphins and seals that Paul has listed, you know, it's not that they are more important than the rest of the marine life. I mean, and I mean, we are involved in defending all marine life. But there is one thing about these species, because they are so charismatic, they have a capital sympathy, right? So if we are not able to save whales, it's not even to save whales, it's to spare them, because whales don't need us saving them. They just need us to leave them alone, right? So if we cannot even spare species that are so charismatic, we won't save anything in the ocean. I mean, we won't even give any thinking to phytoplankton, you know, even though we depend directly on that for survival. So yeah, there is a quote that I say a lot in France, but it applies also here in Switzerland, especially that people, you feel disconnected from the ocean because you don't have the ocean.
Exactly.
But, you know, look at France. I mean, it's a very coastal country.
It is, yeah.
And Éric Tabarly, which is a famous French navigator, used to say, the problem is that for the French people, the ocean is that thing they have in their back when they lay down their towel on the beach, you know. It's that disconnection. And that they are not more connected than you guys.
Yeah,
I mean, for a lot of French people, you know, the main relation they have with marine life is through the dead fish in their plates. And yet they have the ocean. So that connection with the ocean is not necessarily geographical. It's in your mind, it's in your heart. And no matter where you are on the planet, this is something very precious that we have to rebuild if we want to have a chance to save the ocean and to save ourselves.
Yes. Thank you.
When the French trawling fleets were killing dolphins off the coast of France, a lot of people in France said they had no idea there were even dolphins off the coast of France. So we actually had to take these dead bodies that were washing on the shore and put them in front of the Eiffel Tower or on the steps of the National Assembly to say, look, this is what's happening, to get their attention. And of course, it worked.
Yeah. I remember I got to be conscious about ocean when I was watching documentary of Commandant Cousteau, you know, the French famous, how would you call him, explorer?
Oceanographer, yeah.
Yeah. So that was quite boring because I was very young and I was not allowed to watch bullshit on TV. So my mom would accept us to watch that. And now that I think about it, I think that was brilliant. It opened some hidden beauties of the ocean also that are not accessible for us was like me like that. But you're right. Everyone is disconnected, and the purpose now is to how do we reconnect. But before we go there, a little bit of the history of Sea Shepherd, because also I've heard many stories recently. But can we go a little bit back? I think you were working for Paul for Greenpeace at first. Were they previous organization before Greenpeace, or the ocean has been a little bit forgotten also when we talk about preservation and activism?
Well, in 1971, I was part of a group called the Don't Make a Wave Committee, and it was set up to oppose nuclear testing in the Aleutian Islands. And we had to come up with an idea, how can we protest this effectively? And environmentalists got together with the Quakers, because the Quakers had sent a boat down to Bikini Atoll in 1956 to protest nuclear testing by the United States. So we decided, well, we need to get a boat and send it up to Amchitka Island to protest. So at one of the early meetings we had of the Don't Make a Wave Committee, somebody left and flashed a peace sign. And then Bill Darnell, who was at the meeting, he said, make it a Greenpeace. And Bob Hunter said, great name for the boat. So we named that boat the Greenpeace, and the Greenpeace 2. We sent 2 boats up there. And the next year, we changed the name of the Don't Make a Wave Committee to the Greenpeace Foundation. Now, I was with Greenpeace until 1977, but the problem was that it was all about taking pictures and protesting and hanging banners, and I just got tired of seeing whales and seals dying, so I thought there was a need for a more aggressive approach. So I took this strategy, which I called aggressive nonviolence. We're going to aggressively intervene, but not going to hurt anybody. And that's what established the Sea Shepherd Society with, as an approach was aggressive nonviolence. And after 50 years, we never killed or injured anybody, but we were able to intervene against hundreds and hundreds of illegal operations.
Yeah, you may be hurt though, because when we when we see the videos of your action, I'm like, whoa, this is extremely dangerous. So you may not hurt other people, and thank you for that, but you may get hurt. Have you ever been like in a dangerous situation where you could get hurt?
I've been beat up a few times and everything, but generally nobody has really been injured. But the risks are always there. But as I used to always ask the crew, are you prepared to risk your life to protect a whale? And if you're not, then I don't need you. I need people who are willing to take that risk. Now, when reporters have said to me, well, that's asking an awful lot to ask people to risk their life to protect a whale. And I say, well, why? We ask young people to risk their life, to give their life for real estate, flags, religion, and all sorts of nonsense. I think it's a far more noble cause to risk your life to protect an endangered species or a threatened habitat. I mean, if we really valued the natural world as much as we value an oil well in, say, Iraq or somebody's flag, I mean, then we were going to be willing to fight for it. But we're not asking people to kill people for this. We're asking people to take a courageous stand and to protect what they can.
Are you actually asking this question at the interview? Like, would you be taking the risk to hurt yourself to save a whale?
Yes.
Yeah, it is.
It's not rhetorical. It's not like a symbol.
It's a real question. And when I met Paul the first time in 2005, I went to him and I said, "Oh, wow! What you say it echoes what I feel like, and I want to get involved." And I remember perfectly. He said, "Well, are you willing to risk your life for a whale?" And my answer was yes. I had never seen a whale at the time, but for me the answer was quite obvious. And he said, "Well, then apply and join." And a few months later, I was on the ship. So this is a question that you have to take seriously, because it may happen that we are in situations where we put our life at risk, and where you're stepping in. I mean, it doesn't come as a surprise. It's not for everyone, it's fine. But when you are on campaigns, this is part of it. And it's not because we are like kamikaze or we want to, it's just because we are facing people who don't have limits sometimes, and who are ready to injure you or put you in situations where you could potentially die. That's something you take into account when you join.
I think it's, as you said earlier, it's also maybe because that you are now reconnected to nature. So for you, a whale or a human has the same importance? You would say that?
Everything, yeah. I never felt like, okay, my life is more important or is worth more than a whale's life. And it doesn't mean that I don't value my life.
Absolutely not.
You know, it's just that I value the life of a whale because we are all connected again, you know, and to me, these differences that we can make are the roots of wars among us and towards the natural world. Yeah.
I read a story where at one point you thought you were going to die or to be crushed by a boat. Can you tell about this story?
It was the Antarctica campaign.
Story.
It was the Antarctica campaign in 2005, the winter 2005, and we were looking for the Nishin Maru, which is the whaling, the factory ship of the whaling fleets. It's a huge vessel. It's 8,000 tons, and we were on the Fallemowat at the time, the small vessel that Sea Shepherd had at the time. We had only one ship, and miraculously we found the Nishin Maru. It was on the next day after Christmas, and it was there was a storm. I remember the swell was 8 meters high, and Paul was like, "Oh, cool! We found the Nishin Maru, so we're gonna block the road. We're not gonna let him pass." And the Nishin Maru was just heading straight towards us, and really the thing is, because that ship was so big, and because of the swell, and we are at the other edge of the world. I mean, there was nobody else but us. It was going to hit us, and we knew that it would cut our ship in two, and basically we would sink right away. So we were all in surviving suits, and the first officer came in and said, "Okay, collision in 2 minutes." And I remember all we could hear was the alarm sound of the Nishin Maru with the recorded voice saying, "Get out of the way, get out of the way." And Paul is saying, "We're not getting out of the way, or we may as well go home," you know?
So you're in connection, radio connection with them. You're talking to one another.
No, Paul was saying that. I mean, you mean with the Nishin Maru or with Paul?
Yeah, with the...
the Nishin Maru. Yeah, we talk with. I mean, on the radio.
The radio.
But the thing is, this was loudspeaker, like warning on loudspeaker. Wow. I remember that. That was quite impressive. And anyway, so telling us collision in 2 minutes, we know that we are gonna sink like right. And I remember it was an important moment for me because on that moment I thought, okay, so this is the end. That's it. We are all gonna die today. So how do you feel when this happens? Because when I told Paul, yeah, I'm ready to risk my life for a whale, I'm in Paris, you know. So even though
I felt concept,
well, the thing is, I felt it, but it's one thing to say it when you're not in the situation, and how you behave when you are actually facing the situation and it becomes a reality. And to me, it was an important moment because although I felt afraid, I think we were all afraid because, okay, you think, okay, this is the end of it. I had no regret whatsoever. And there was no other place in the world where I wanted to be. I felt deep inside that I was exactly where I was supposed to be. And if today was the last day, so be it, because I was doing what I felt was right. And to me, it has been very important also for the rest of my engagement because I knew and I know I'm on the right track.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember, that's for the funny part, I remember it crossed my mind at that moment that I thought, oh, wow, it's easier to sign petition, huh? you know, than getting out there. And so, but anyway, and if I'm telling the story, it's because the captain of the Nishin Maru just changed course at the last minute. And I remember Paul saying that, okay, we have 45 crews, 23 nationalities on board. Just imagine like the huge diplomatic clash that Japan is going to have to go through if they kill activists in a whale sanctuary, you know, from all these countries. I mean, it's going to be terrible. And he bet on that, and he was right because he changed the course at the last minute. So yeah, it was a life changing moment for me.
Wow, yeah, passion, engagement. That's very impressive from an external person like me. I'm like, are you crazy? But it's so important, as you say, that we reconnect and protect our nature. Essential. So I only feel gratitude for guys like you. that I cannot do myself this kind of defense. But yeah, thank you very much for that. Mm.
Well, you know, it's important, I think, when we tell these kinds of stories, to also get the message across that this is not the only way or the best way to get involved. And I think it's so important that everyone does what fits him, you know. And this is not for everyone. What we do. And it's as important as, I don't know, a teacher, a lawyer, an artist that's gonna do what it's meant to do. And these stories are impressive, but the only purpose of these stories is, as I said earlier, is to trigger questioning, you know, okay, maybe that's important, and then find a way to get involved your own way, you know. And like by doing podcasts, for example, is one great way.
The strength of an ecosystem is in diversity. Therefore, the strength of a movement is in diversity. So that approach can be litigation, legislation, education, direct activism. It all works towards the same end. But each and every one of us has to say, what am I good at? What are my talents? And how can I utilize those talents to make this a better world? And so, you know, I just happen to be able to operate a ship and, you know, go after people on the high seas, but at the same time, the other people are very effective in their other approaches. But most importantly is the fact that one person can make a difference. One person can change the world. I mean, because of Diane Fossey, we still have mountain gorillas in Rwanda. You know, because of David Wingate, so most people haven't heard of, but because of this wildlife biologist in Bermuda, the Bermuda storm petrel did not go extinct. And I can't think of anything more noble than, because you've interfered or intervened, a species was saved from going extinct.
Yeah, that's impressive. I think that's why you are so inspiring also, because you're in the forefront, and I think you're taking the risk that we wish we could take, but not everyone has the guts, and that's fine. As you say, we're all different. And you've been working on that all your life, we can say, Paul. What I like in when I work, I do stuff on land. What gives me hope is when I see there is an evolution, when some stuff change. And on your field, it's really hard because the problem is so deep and so diverse that to really see what improves if you basically make an impact is hard. So would you say from all these years, have you been witnessing an impact that goes in the right direction? You gave the example of this species that was saved, but are we going in the right direction?
Well, we can only do our part. For our part, I mean, we drove the Japanese whaling fleet out of the Southern Ocean Whale Sanctuary, saved 6,500 whales in the process. Since I've begun doing this, Australia and South Korea and South Africa and Spain, all these countries have stopped whaling. About 90% of the whaling that was being done has no longer taken place. We're now restricted to Japan, Norway, Iceland, and the Faroe Islands, and I think we're going to stop Iceland this year. And we'll eventually shut it down. When I set up Sea Shepherd in 1977, it was with the one really primary focus, and that is we're going to end whaling worldwide. It's an evil. These are very intelligent, self-aware, sentient beings, and we have no right to kill them. And so that was my primary ambition, was just to end whaling, and I think that'll be achieved.
Yeah. What are we using whale for in the first place? I'm like, I've never eaten whale. Do we eat whales? Why are these countries still, or why have we been historically hunting whales? What are they for?
Well, the reasons for killing whales have changed over time. Whaling up until like 1865 was the oil industry of the planet. Whale oil was as valuable as oil is today. It was actually so valuable it was selling for $1,000 a barrel at that time, much more valuable than oil today. It was only because of the discovery of petroleum refinery that the oil industry, the whaling oil industry, was retired, thankfully, in time. But whales were becoming very rare because of that. I mean, the whaling ships had to go all the way around the world to find whales. They were wiping them out everywhere. And then that died up and the whales started to recover. And then we started to kill whales during World War I. Whale oil was used to make munitions, explosives. They used whale oil to put into the boots of of soldiers in the trenches because it prevented a thing called trench foot from happening and everything. And then that sort of died out. And then now the whaling's being done for the food industry. In Japan, primarily. So whales are being killed because there's 1% of the Japanese people eat whale meat. That's it, 1%. But that's the only reason that they're going after it. But one of the things that changed my life in 1975 when we encountered the Soviet whaling fleet was the realization that the Russians were killing sperm whales not to eat, but for spermaceti and sperm oil. And one of the things that it was used for primarily was for the construction and maintenance of intercontinental ballistic missiles. So here we were destroying this incredibly intelligent, beautiful, self-aware sentient species for the purpose of making a weapon meant for the mass extermination of human beings. And that's when it hit me, we're insane. And so from that moment on, I said, I'm going to do everything I can to protect whales from us. And that's why I've done that for the last 50 years.
Insane, indeed. It's crazy when you think about it. And today, so you've decided to break from the old traditional way of doing stuff gently. Does that bear fruit too? Because we can think it's a strategy to do non-violence aggressively. That's what you said.
Aggressive non-violence.
Yeah. Does that also bring fruits? Do you think? Have you witnessed in a difference in efficiency of what you're doing?
We became the most effective marine conservation activist organization in the world because of aggressive non-violence. We're shutting down illegal operations, illegal whaling, overfishing, and things that we've been shutting them down through aggressively intervening. Now, what aggressive nonviolence is that I'm not going to hurt anybody, but I'm going to go after their equipment, which is being used illegally. For instance, if a man is about to shoot an elephant and you knock that rifle out of his hand and break the rifle, that is an act of aggressive nonviolence, because no non-sentient object is more valuable than a sentient being. So if you destroy property to protect the life of a sentient creature, that is an act of aggressive nonviolence. Even Martin Luther King once said, you cannot commit violence against a non-sentient object. Violence can only be directed towards a living thing. So we're operating in a world where violence is being perpetuated every day in the interests, it's in the interests of the economy or whatever. We justify it all the time. And then when you try to interfere with that, that's considered, well, that's a little radical, interfering with that. But nonviolence is a radical concept in our society, because property is more important than the life of, not only the life of animals, but the life of people. We will justify the slaughter of tens of thousands of people if it means making money by selling weapons or real estate or whatever.
And you started that way. The story that I've read is that they were killing the seals with the stick. We remember these horrible videos where there were blood everywhere. And so you took the stick from a guy and you threw it in the ocean, right? Or is it a myth? Oh.
No, I was the campaign leader for Greenpeace in 1977, and I was out on the ice, and a Norwegian sealer was about to club a seal with a hack-a-pick. It's a club with a spike in it. And I ran forward and I grabbed it out of his hand and threw it into the sea. And I picked up the seal and took it to safety. And that's what I thought I was there for. I was called before the Greenpeace board and charged with theft and vandalism. You stole that man's property, you destroyed his property. I said, yeah, but I saved the life of a seal and I didn't hurt anybody. Well, no, the property damage is never justified. I said, well, in my mind it is, if it means protecting the seal. So that is really the difference between that bearing witness approach of Greenpeace and the an aggressive nonviolence approach that I replaced it with.
And the French I would say branch of Sea Shepherd has also adopted. French entity has also adopted these the same philosophy in action.
Sea Shepherd France is an offspring of Paul Watson. So yeah, we are like in the direct DNA line of Sea Shepherd, and of course that's what we do. What comes closer to this today in the French campaigns would be what we do in Mayotte. The French island, where hundreds of turtles are being butchered every year. So we patrol the beaches and we stop the poachers and we
Why
destroy.
is that? The turtle for what?
There is a black market for the turtle meat. It's completely forbidden, right? It's a protected species. It's an endangered species. But the problem is that that meat sells for a lot of money on the black market, and hundreds of turtles, when they go on the beach to lay down their eggs, they meet with poachers, and they are being slaughtered in a absolutely horrific manner. And so we directly intervene, and we take their property. We recently destroyed one of their boats. And we do that because we save the lives of these turtles. And this is not an act of violence. The violence is to cut alive a turtle that came to bring life, right? But I think that accusation of violence comes from a very there is a monetary thing, but there is also a very anthropocentric vision.
Yeah.
When you consider that. That the harpoon or the knife or the hackapick of a human being is more important than the life of the animal that it's going to destroy. So it depends on what's your hierarchy of values. So, like, what do you value the most? Life is what is more valuable than anything.
Mm-hmm.
And when you interfere with an illegal operation like the killing of whales, and for instance, 1986, we sank half of Iceland's whaling fleet, sent it to the bottom. Plus, we destroyed the whale processing plant, about $3 million worth of damage. That sounds like it's a criminal activity, right?
Yeah. How do you think a boat?
Well, you get into the engine room, open up the saltwater cooling system, flood the engine room, and sink it dockside. And there's nobody on board at the time. But I said after the sinking, that was in November of '86, I sent letters to the government in Iceland. I said, do you have any charges against me? What's the status for this? They wouldn't respond. They wouldn't respond to that. I had to fly to Reykjavik in January 1988 to demand that they arrest me for the sinking of those ships. So I was met at the airport, and the immigration authority said, "How long do you intend to stay in Iceland?" I said, "I don't know, 5 days, 5 minutes, 5 years, it's up to you." So we went up to interrogation, and they said, "Are you admitting to sinking the ships? You know that we sunk them. We're going to sink the other 2 at the first opportunity." And so they put me in jail overnight. The next morning, 2 police officers came to escort me to the airport, send me back to the U.S., and the Minister of Justice stood up, and he's in the Parliament, or the all thing there, and he said, "Who does he think he is? He comes into our country, demands to be arrested. Get him out of here." The reason being is they knew to put me on trial would be to put themselves on trial for their illegal activities. We're opposing a crime.
Yeah.
And so when people say what you did in Iceland was criminal, no, there were no charges. So it wasn't criminal.
Yeah, yeah.
And so you can call us all the names you want, but I'll go to Iceland tomorrow and say, put me on trial. But they won't do that. And so that's the difference, really. And what we do is actually authorized by the United Nations. In 1986, the UN passed the World Charter for Nature. And then the section on enforcement in the World Charter for Nature that says that any non-government organization, any individual is empowered to uphold international conservation law, especially in areas beyond national jurisdiction. In 1993, I disrupted illegal fishing operations off the coast of Newfoundland in Canada. I drove the Spanish drift trawler fleet off the Grand Banks. Canada arrested me for that, outside of the 200-mile limit. They put me on trial for 3 counts of mischief. I was facing 2 times life in prison plus 10 years for this. And it was a big trial in Newfoundland. And my defense, UN World Charter for Nature. Canada brought in a law professor to argue that, well, that doesn't mean anything in Canadian law. And the judge said to the professor, "Well, didn't Canada sign this?" And she said, "Well, Canada signs a lot of things." And so the judge looked at the jury and said,
"That's weak."
Yeah, the judge looked at the jury and said, "If Canada signed it, you have to take it into account." I was acquitted and released. They spent $3 million arresting me and putting me on trial, only to be acquitted because the World Charter for Nature said that I had the right to do that. In 2011, I was invited by the FBI to come and give a lecture to the FBI on activism. And after the lecture, one of the FBI agents says, "Well, you know, Sea Shepherd's walking a pretty fine line when it comes to the law." And I said, "Well, does it matter how fine that line is as long as you don't actually cross the line?" And they said, yeah, you've got a point there. So,
Well, they crossed the line, so they should know.
yeah, but that's the thing. We do not cross that line.
Yeah.
We do not. We operate within the boundaries of the law and the boundaries of practicality and morality.
Yeah.
And that's what the important thing is: not hurting anybody and making sure that our targets are operated. They're criminal operations that we're targeting.
That's what I hear. And you called pirate in a bad way, but I think you're a pirate in a good way. But you're saying that every time you act, it's on illegal behavior. So would you say you are not like a pirate, but a police that is enforcing something that the real police is not enforcing?
Historically, pirates have always served a very positive purpose when governments wanted them to serve that purpose. Then they're called privateers. But the English used the pirates to go after the Spanish. But when they made peace with the Spanish, then the privateers were out of work, and then they became pirates. But throughout history, pirates have been heroes. Roger Surcouf in France, Jean Lafitte in the U.S., plus Sir Walter Raleigh and Sir Francis Drake. And the founder of the United States Navy, John Paul Jones, was a pirate. He was also the founder of the Russian Navy, by the way, because Catherine the Great invited him there. So history has had a very romantic view of pirates. And all they can ever come up with is, well, they stole gold. And I'm going, who did they steal that gold from? The Spanish. And where did the Spanish get that gold? They stole it from the Indians. So, is that a crime?
Yeah.
And everything. But the great thing about the pirates, they got things done. They cut through all that bureaucratic nonsense and they got things done. They were the first ships on the ocean to have democratically elected captains. They were the first ships on the ocean to have no discrimination on the basis of race and gender. Captain Blackbeard's first officer was a black African former slave. Because Blackbeard said, you rise to the level of your competence, not by what your race is or what everything. They asked Anne Bonny, the most famous woman pirate of all time, well, it's a death penalty for piracy. Doesn't that bother you? And she says, thank God for the death penalty, because if it wasn't for that, everybody would be doing this. So, it keeps it down. But the thing is that the bottom line is they cut through the bullshit and they got things done. Sir Henry Morgan, a very famous pirate, he was the one who ended piracy in the Caribbean, and his reward was to become a real pirate when they made him governor of Jamaica. Now that's when you become a real pirate, is when you become a politician.
Yeah, and probably these deranged people, and that's why they're coming after you, because they don't like that you're taking on the big guns, being pirates, as they say. But regarding to the law, Lamya, would you say that the law is sufficient as it is in France, right? For instance, to protect rightly the interest of the ocean, would say like that?
Well, I don't know about France in particular. I don't think so. Well, for example, the Antarctic sanctuary. I mean, if you respect the law, I mean, there should be no whaling there, and just the fact that Sea Shepherd had to go there to enforce the sanctuary is absolutely crazy when you think about it.
Who should enforce that?
Well, the governments. I mean, France, Australia, New Zealand. I mean, these countries should be protecting the Antarctic sanctuary that has been acknowledged by the international community. It shouldn't be like an NGO that has to do the job of the governments, but that's what happens. But when it comes to protecting, for example, marine life in France, we can see all the weaknesses in the law that is very permissive. For example, the treasure shark is protected species, endangered, it's forbidden to catch it, right? But the law allows fishermen to sell it if it's bycatch. So if they accidentally caught it. And
the loophole.
thousands of treasure sharks are being sold on French markets every year, knowing that it's a protected species, it's endangered, and you're not allowed to fish it. And this is like absolutely crazy. I mean, that kind of law. Or also, I don't know, the marine protected areas. You can say, okay, this is a marine protected areas. And the words are very deceiving, because in the general public minds, when you say protected areas, then you think that you cannot do industrial projects, you cannot do fishing or destructive fishing, but all of this is allowed in marine protected areas. So we have to work on the definition of what's a marine protected area and what's allowed and what's forbidden in marine protected areas. Because France is, for example, very proud to say, oh, we have 20% of our waters that is marine protected areas. But
you know what a marine protected area is? Where poachers go because they know there's fish there.
Oh, that's what it does. So,
yeah, because well, that's the best place because we wiped them out everywhere else. Let's go to the marine protection areas.
Of course,
the problem is there's a lack of economic and political motivation to uphold international conservation law. There's basically, it's a wild west out there. You know, people do whatever they want.
In international water?
International waters is meaningless without enforcement. Like last year, everybody was saying, oh, how's it great? We got a high seas treaty. And I said, how is that great? We got a treaty, but nobody's going to uphold it. Nobody's going to enforce it. So it's absolutely meaningless. It means nothing.
Yeah, the enforcement is key. And of course, it's true in the high seas, but it's also true in coastal waters because there is a total lack of political will to actually enforce the law in regulating fishing. For example, France was condemned to pay millions of euros of fine to the European Union because of the lack of controls in fisheries.
Yeah, overfishing is obviously still a problem.
But you know, it's linked to the fish in our plates. And I mean, when we talk about overfishing, when we talk about the number one threat on marine mammals, which is bycatch, right?
Yeah.
This is our expanding appetite for fish, right?
That's the source of the problem.
It's the key. We eat way.
There's a demand for fish.
There's a huge demand.
But the real problem is that 40% of that fish that's taken isn't even eaten by people.
Yeah,
it's fed to chickens and salmon and pigs, so it's rendered into fish meal. And so we're taking the smallest fishes like the whiting and the herring and the mackerel, and we're grinding them up into this cheap protein mix to feed to factory farm chickens and everything. Chickens eat more fish than all the world's albatrosses and puffins and seagulls put together. So they are the biggest consumer of fish, are chickens. And so this is what kind of world is that where chickens are eating more fish than all the seabirds and everything. But this is what we've done. If the first step they should do is to eliminate fish meal plants, eliminate this feeding of fish to factory farmed animals.
Yeah.
Yes.
That would go a long way.
That would be a key measure.
Is it?
Yes. Yes.
Because there's something special in that kind of food that nourish the animals?
It's cheap.
It's a cost.
It's cheap protein.
Cheap
Very
protein.
cheap protein. And now that's why they want to go after shrimp, krill in the Southern Ocean. They want to take millions of tons of krill out of the Southern Ocean, which is basically the food of the whales and the penguins. And they want to take that in order to render it into this protein paste that they can then feed to animals on factory farms or to fish on fish farms.
So we always say also one measure we can take is eat less meat. We heard that. Do we also advertise for eating less fish?
Of course. And I mean, one thing that's really frustrating is when people, understand that, hey, we eat too much meat, so we're going to lower our consumption of meat. But hey, we're going to eat more fish to compensate, you know?
Well, the other thing, too, one of the cheapest fishes on the market now is salmon, farm-raised salmon, because they got all these farmers
Apparently,
that raise it. And
in Norway.
And people actually say to me, well, it's better to raise a farm-raised salmon and to catch the fish out of the ocean, except it takes on average 60 fish out of the ocean to raise one fish on a salmon farm. You have to turn to provide them with fish meal.
Yeah.
Plus, these fish farms have zoonotic transmission of viruses to wild salmon populations. That, yes. They're injecting them with antibiotics and chemicals.
Gross.
Basically, a farm-raised salmon
Polluting
is poison.
Yeah.
You know, but that's why. But it's cheap. It's everywhere. It's the most common fish you can find now.
So let's stop eating fish. You were also calling for, how do you call that? For 75 years, you put an overall.
Well, there should be a moratorium. I would say.
What is a moratorium?
It means that we shouldn't have any commercial fishing for at least 75 years, so that the ocean can restore the destruction that we've caused to it.
No fishing anymore at all.
Well, if we don't stop fishing for at least 75 years, within the next 30, 40 years, there will be no fishing, because it'll all collapse. It's collapsing right now. 90% of the bluefin tuna population is gone. The northern cod population has crashed. The orange roughy population is now commercially extinct. So what happens is when we wipe out one species, we just forget about it. We'll move on to something else. So we have this incredible capacity to adapt to diminishment. As things become more diminished, we just move on to something else.
We destroy something else.
Yeah, and we forget about what we forget the damage that we've done.
It's like that amnesia is key. Also, it's very important. And for example, when it comes to whales, you know, now that when you see a whale approaching a harbor, you have an article in the local newspaper. Oh, we saw a whale, and it's very interesting to read the historical books and to see that a couple hundred years ago, I mean, along the coast of France, ships had to stop for days to let the whales pass by. Just imagine how the ocean was. We have no memory of that. So we don't realize how we are fighting now for the last remaining piece of wildlife, you know? And I think it's very important in history, in human history, we say that we have a duty of memory, you know, to remember what has been done so that we don't redo the same mistake. And I think ecologically speaking, we need to entertain that memory. We need to know what we have destroyed. And all these species that we have wiped out, we need to know and acknowledge it.
But we've forgotten it. Over the last 300 years, we've wiped out hundreds of species and forgotten that they were ever there. So in the last 200-300 years, we've lost the Atlantic gray whale, extinct, the sea mink, extinct, the Labrador duck, extinct, the the Carolina parakeet, extinct, the eastern bison, extinct, the walrus extirpated off of Newfoundland and even off of the coast of Scandinavia. There used to be belugas in Long Island Sound, no more. The polar bears used to be down as far as New England. They've been driven up to the north. They used to be called just the white bears. So we've wiped out species after species, and we just forget about them. You know, there's something else. The idea that that they were even part of that ecological system has been removed. And when you remove a species, you cause a series of diminishment. Yeah. For instance, when the Dutch sailors killed off the dodo birds in Mauritius, one of the consequences was this one tree, Calvaria major. It's a mulberry plant, and it started to go extinct, because it could only propagate by putting its seeds through the intestines or the gizzards of dodo birds, because that's the law of interdependence. All species are interdependent with each other. So when you remove a species, it has a negative impact on numerous other species going down the line.
Obviously. There are some that we know and some that we'll never know because it's too complex and beautiful.
But the problem is, a few years ago, I got a reporter from the Fox network in the U.S. called me up and says, "Did you say that worms, trees, and bees and whales are more important than people?" I said, "Yeah, I said that." "How could you say something so outrageous that they're more important than people? That's so anti-Christian." And I'm going, yeah, well, I said it because they're more important than people for a very simple reason. They can live here without us. We can't live here without them. We don't live in a world.
It's not the moral judgment you're making.
We don't live here in a world without bees or trees or fish or whales. We just simply will not survive. Yeah. We need them. That's the law of interdependence. We have to protect them and not destroy them. We have to look at what kind of future is there without these species. If bees disappear from the planet tomorrow, we're going to be in some serious problem. That's going to result in the mass starvation of billions of people because of that.
There are some places already in China, I think, where bees
have to manually pollinate.
This is dystopia.
That's crazy.
Yeah. What do you think about the idea of taking only a certain amount of these fish per year or stuff like that? Is it like possible, or the bycatch are rendering this completely inefficient?
Every kilo of shrimp you buy in the supermarket means 22 kilos of something else had to die in those nets. The bycatch is significantly greater than the actual fish which is consumed. So it's the mechanized industrial exploitation of fish species has an incredible negative consequence on all other species in the sea. We've got to get rid of that kind of industrial exploitation. Drag nets, bottom trawlers, long lines, gigantic gill nets. We pulled one gill net out of the Southern Ocean from one ship. That one gill net, which was set 2 kilometers deep, took 200 hours to pull up. It was 72 kilometers long and weighed 70 tons. One net from one ship. So you can see how, a good 35 to 40% of all of the plastic pollution in the ocean is abandoned or discarded fishing gear. So there's enough long line gill nets and fishing gear set every single day to go around the planet 60 times.
Wow.
But to answer also your question is today survival fishing, like meaning fish being fished by people who would otherwise have no protein. This represents 2% of the global fishing, right? So there is enough fish in the ocean for survival needs. Now, I'm being very practical. I mean, in an ideal world, there would be no fishing unless it's for survival. But I know that's not going to happen. I mean, countries like France or, Western countries, they're not going to stop commercial fishing like tomorrow, right? So I think the very important thing is, first of all, people to realize that they have the artificial impression that there is no problem because when you look at the French markets, there is fish. People don't realize that 80% of the fish sold in France is imported, and it's imported from Africa mainly, you know? So this is one thing to take into account. Also, I think that fishing, if it has to be fishing, it has to make it mandatory to respect the integrity of the marine ecosystem. So the huge problem is, it's the destruction of habitat, but it's also bycatch. And to have gill nets that capture so many dolphins and birds, juveniles, you know, this is absolutely crazy. And I think this is what we need to stop in priority, because this is very practical, and this is, how to say, like the most reasonable goal that we can reach out, I think. And my hope is that with some fishermen, not all of them, but with some fishermen, there is some discussion that's possible about basically targeting the objective of having fishing operations that don't damage the integrity of ecosystems. So no bycatch, or like drastically lower all bycatch, no catch of juveniles, some protected areas like the nurseries for fish. I mean, all these things to be implemented.
We could do that properly,
but
better.
Yeah, there's a huge room for progress in this, right? But this implies a drastic drop in consumption of fish, right? Because it means fishing much, much, much less, you know? And I think this is achievable and this is reasonable. And anyway, we don't have any choice, because if we don't do this,
there will be no more.
Yeah, we're just gonna wipe out everything, and we're gonna die with the ocean.
That's it. The more fearful force against you is money, the economy. I think the answer is like, you're going to do you want to put like fishermen out in poverty because they won't have any work left?
It'd actually be cheaper to pay the fishermen not to fish. We spend $75 to $80 billion to subsidize industrial fishing. You know, it wouldn't exist without those subsidies. The EU alone puts billions and billions of dollars into paying for these giant fishing boats and the technology to go out and get them. If you actually paid fishermen to not fish, then because right now it's just a glorified welfare program. That's what it is. And also because they want to keep supplying fish to the market and that. So as the fish populations become more diminished, more money is put into it to make it easier to catch. So they giant factory ships, super trawlers, these 100-mile-long gill nets, that's what you need to catch the fish. I was raised in a fishing village in eastern Canada, and I go to a fish market, say in Paris today, I'm looking at the prices. I mean, how expensive all of this is and everything, because it takes so much money and effort and technology to get it now, because it illustrates diminishment. You see plenty of fish in the fish markets, but it's so difficult to get that fish and everything. Where, say, 50 years ago, that fish was very easy to get. You know, for 300 years, the Grand Banks of Newfoundland supported the entire North American and European population with cod. And it didn't have any problems at all. There was no reduction, because for 300 years you had boats going out there with the lines, catching them like this, and salting them and getting them back to market. But after World War II, giant trawlers went in there, and within 20 years had wiped it out. The northern population of northern cod, which had been sustainable for 300 years, wiped out within a matter of decades by this greed of these trawlers that went out there. And in 1980s, I predicted that the northern cod population would crash. The Canadian government scientists said, Watson, you don't know what you're talking about. We had the best computer models. We had the best scientists. And you were wrong, sir. You have no idea what you're talking about. And I was wrong, because it didn't crash in 30 years. It crashed in 1992. And as soon as it crashed, they said, well, it'll recover. We just need a 5-year moratorium. Oh, a 10-year moratorium. A 20-year moratorium. You know, it's never recovered. And that was in 1992. Because the scientists who work for the Canadian government, or who work for any other government, I got a name for them. They're called biostitutes. You know, they're paid to tell the government what the government wants to be told. Oh yeah, there's no problem with we can sustain this fishery and everything like this. It is impossible to sustain a commercial fishery with that kind of exploitation. And to say otherwise is a blatant lie, but if you pay enough to the scientists, they'll say anything they want.
Yeah. Will a good way also is to put the real price to fish, so you can multiply by 10 the real price of a fish in your plate? Would that be also something?
I don't know. People will tell you, oh, so that's going to be a commodity only for the rich. You know, it's unfair.
Yeah.
The thing is that I think our collective right to live on a living planet is more important than the right to eat fish. But yeah.
Let's just take one fish, for instance, Chilean sea bass, which is an expensive fish. Why is it expensive? First of all, it's called Antarctic or Patagonia toothfish. Very ugly looking fish, but nobody's going to buy toothfish and everything. So let's just change the name. It's not from Chile, but we'll call it Chilean. It's not a bass, but we'll call it a bass, Chilean sea bass. Now, we catch this fish in the Southern Ocean. We put it on a plane and we fly it to Paris, or we fly it to New York and we sell it as Chilean sea bass. I mean, the carbon footprint alone is ridiculous, but it's one of the most expensive fish. Second to, say, the bluefin tuna. The bluefin tuna is now the most expensive fish on the planet. One bluefin tuna average price is $75,000. In the Japanese market. Some of them sell for over $1 million at the auction every year. One fish. Because of the incredible scarcity. Scarcity translates into demand.
That's the whole capitalism here.
Yeah. For instance, they could stop fishing bluefin tuna today, put an end to it for 10 years, just stop. But they don't do that, because if they did that and the bluefin tuna population begin to rise, that will cause the fish in the supermarket, they have 10-year supply in their warehouses right now, 10, 15-year supply. That supply's price will go down as the wild population goes up. The scarcity of the fish translates into higher profits. So what if they go extinct? Now the fish that they've got, the 10 to 15-year supply, becomes invaluable. You know, we can sell it for anything. It would be ridiculous prices because there's no more on the planet. This is the last of it. And people will pay good money to eat the last fish that's on the planet. So again, diminishment translates into scarcity, and that translates into profit.
To give an illustration on the interdependence that Paul was talking about, that bluefin tuna is the exclusive food for orcas. There is an Iberian population of orcas in the Detroit of Gibraltar, in Spanish, Portuguese, Moroccan waters, right? And this population is critically endangered, down to 40 individuals, because of the overfishing of bluefin tuna. And people don't make that connection either, you know? So the fact that we actually wipe out also the fish that is key to marine predators has an impact on those top predators. And I also wanted to add something about the scientist part. You know, Paul talked about the biostitutes, which is like, yeah, an issue. There is also the other issue, which are the independent, serious, honest scientists that are being completely ignored by the governments. And for example, we've been confronted to that with the offshore windmills in France. I mean, we have the scientific from the Conseil National pour la Protection de la Nature that raised the alarm on many industrial projects and that opposes the authorization of destruction of protected species and everything. And they are being completely ignored, completely. And they're like, I mean,
They really choose.
Yeah, I've been talking to some of them, and they're like, we feel like so frustrated and in despair, because all our work and all the alarm, all the alert that we are trying to sensibilize the government on, we're just being ignored, you know. So I think one thing that's key is that the scientific advice of genuine and honest scientists should be mandatory. I mean, it shouldn't be only about the political will, you know. Right now, the politicians can just decide to ignore scientific alerts, you know. So when you have, you have the scientists that you will you will pay to tell you what you want, and you have scientists who will tell you what you don't want to hear, and you just ignore them.
That's also crazy. What do you make of the cultural argument? Like, let's take the Faroe Island, where we could witness like the butchering, and the entire cove is in red. Is it real that they have been doing that forever, but killing so many things? Because I think there's a culture. I mean, we've heard about humanity feeding with fish forever, and probably there are some rituals and some beliefs, I guess. What do you make of these?
Well, tradition has is no justification for slaughter, for cruelty. You know, this is the 21st century. They shouldn't be doing that kind of thing. I mean, we're making progress. For instance, Catalonia has banned the bullfight. Colombia has banned the bullfight. The UK has banned fox hunting. I mean, if we kept a tradition, we'd still have slavery, for example, and everything. Things have got to change. There is no justification for the mass slaughter of pilot whales and dolphins in the Faroe Islands. And not only is it no justification for it, the fact is it's killing the Faroese people because of the high concentration of mercury, and they're allowing themselves to be seduced by the fact that it's tradition so that they can poison themselves. The highest level of methylmercury poisoning of any group of children on the planet is in the Faroe Islands because of the ingestion of methylmercury tainted pilot whale and dolphin meat.
Where does this mercury come from?
It comes from the animals they're eating because they're very high on the food chain. The higher the animal is on the food chain, the more methylmercury and other heavy metals in their bodies on that. And so the science for this actually comes from Faroese doctors who have done the research on this and who advised to not eat this. So what now, they're restricted to 200 grams of pilot whale or dolphin meat a month, but most of the time they ignore that. But the problem is now they're killing vast numbers of pilot whales and dolphins, and they can't eat them all because of the restrictions. So they just dump them in the ocean. They're just killed for no reason whatsoever because, well, my grandfather did this, and his father did this, and his great-grandfather did it too. Well, you know, I could say, you know, my family wasn't involved with the slave trade, but if I was, I said, well, you know, my great-grandfather had slaves, so what's the problem here, you know?
That would be the
thing is that there was a survival issue back in time, like when it was a very isolated archipelago, which is, it's not the case anymore. I mean, when you go to a supermarket in the Faroe Islands, you find all sorts of meats imported from Europe. You find actually sheep imported from New Zealand. Yeah. So that's one of the arguments. You say, yeah, but this is the food that from the animals that we kill ourselves. You know, it's local food. Okay, then stop importing all that meat from the rest of the world. You know, so they're like schizophrenic on that. But the thing is, yeah, there is no justification anymore for that kind of thing, and the tradition is not even respected anyway, because they use like the most modern technique to track down whales now. They use helicopter, motorboats, cell phones.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's not very traditional.
It's not traditional at all, right? True. And I mean,
the Faroe Islands have the highest per capita income of any group in Europe, higher than any other European nation. You know, so they're the wealthiest place in Europe, and so there's no excuse for and they're heavily subsidized by the EU. And here's the thing: killing pilot whales and dolphins is illegal under EU law. Denmark is a signatory to that. Denmark's part of it. The Faroese are given an exemption, but they hold EU passports. So how can they get the benefits of the EU, but they can
Not
still
the constraint,
violate
yeah.
EU regulations because they're given special treatment by Denmark on this? It's the Danish police that enforce it. It's Danish immigration. Denmark's involved in something which is illegal under the laws of the European Union, but nobody wants to deal with it because it's a little controversial or whatever. So that's what we're trying to get the EU to take a look at this. But it's been very, very frustrating because they don't want to do anything about it.
Yeah, because Denmark has signed all the laws and treaties and regulations to protect marine mammals, right? It's absolutely illegal in Danish water to kill dolphins or to intentionally harass dolphins. And yet, they sent us their military vessels to stop us from intervening. This is absolutely illegal.
Yeah.
You cannot use the military force to allow something that is forbidden in your own country. But the problem is that, I mean, a country in EU would have to attack, to file a lawsuit against Denmark. But hey, dolphins don't weigh much when you compare them to all the commercial and political connection between countries in EU and Denmark. So this is entirely political. And also the support of Denmark to the Green is political. It's because there is an independence movement in the Faroes that want to get rid of Denmark for some reason, and Denmark want to keep their hands on the Faroes for oil and gas and fisheries, and that question of the green debt wrap is very political, because Denmark is like, hey, we are protecting your rights of doing the green debt wrap, right? So they know that if they don't support them anymore, it's going to be a huge lift for the independent party.
Can you, Sea Shepherd, do something when they're trying to get these pilot whales? Can you go and interfere? Have you been trying that? Or how? Because I think they make noise to push them ashore, and then once they are ashore, they just knife them out.
It's a sort of weakness. I mean, it's a characteristic of the pilot whales that they use against them. It's very, very easy to drive them. In 2014, we had several boats sent by Sea Shepherd France to patrol the area, find the whales before the ferries did, and to drive them away. And I remember one day we had 80 whales in the fjord, which was like the worst case scenario, because it's like pretty much too late. And the only thing that was, I mean, we were lucky with is that the whales entered the fjord because they were hiding from storms, and they had a lot of offsprings, young with them. And they choose, by chance, they choose a fjord where there was no killing beach. So the ferries were planning on waiting the next day when the weather would become better to come and drive the whales and take them to a next fjord where they could actually kill them. So we took the risk. We got our boats out, and we from another place in the island. We brought the boats to the fjord, and it was like a 5.5 meters boat, like it's a small boat, right?
Oh, yeah.
And we drove the whales back at sea like super easily, just with that small boat. And the Faroese people were super pissed off because they didn't expect us to take the risks to go through the storm with such a small boat and drive the whales back at sea. But that's to tell you how easy, unfortunately, it is to drive them. And they've been using that against them. So the most effective thing we've ever done was to have several boats spread out in the archipelagos and patrolling every day. And as soon as we spot whales, we drive them out. But we've been so effective that they passed that law to ban our ships from coming back.
On what law?
A law restricting our entry into their waters with any of our boats.
Wow.
The other thing they did was at one point we intervened with a small inflatable boat, high-powered boat, fast boat. They were driving them against the shore. Our boat got between the whales and these guys and disrupted the whole thing. Our crew got arrested for cruelty to animals. For causing stress to the dolphin, to pilot whales. You cause stress, and we're going, those guys are chasing them with many boats, causing even more stress, and we're intervening to stop them from doing that.
Yeah, and they know
and what did the Danish court say? They're exempt.
Who?
The whalers, they're exempt. They have exemption under the law. They can stress, they can cause cruelty to animals because we're allowing them to do it. But you can't do it. So even though your objective is to protect the whales, you're now charged with cruelty to animals.
Okay.
This is the kind of double standard that we
Yeah,
have
sure.
to deal with and everything. Laws are created in order to protect vested interests. They're not created out of
I know that.
equality.
Yeah. What about the plastic pollution? How bad is it hurting the wildlife animal? You said earlier about the pollution within the animal that then infects the human who consume them. But have you been also noticing, I don't know how often you are at sea, but an increase in visibility of basically trash in the ocean? We're
Well, there is
talking
more-
about patches.
There
or-
is more and more plastic being thrown in the ocean, and the prediction, according to the current consumption of plastic, is that it's just going higher and higher. I mean, it's not getting any better.
Mm.
The real problem
So-
is it breaks down into nanoplastics,
Yeah.
and that gets
then
into the
it's
bodies of
ingested.
fish, even gets into the bodies of zooplankton. And of course, if anybody eats fish, they got it in their bodies also. Nanoplastics is going to be more and more of a problem. Now, this whole kind of these garbage patches, you don't see them. I've sailed through them. They're not there. They're underwater.
Okay.
And so it's all drifting under the water and everything. So you can sail right through these giant areas of plastic without actually even seeing them, but they're there. Where you see it is washing up on beaches. I spent a number of months on islands of Tonga and Vanuatu, the Great Barrier Reef, just polluted plastic everywhere, from all sorts of countries. I was thinking from Indonesia, from China, from the U.S. It's all over, coming from everywhere. So the amount of plastic is incredibly high, but the real problem is it breaks down and it looks like plankton, and therefore birds are eating it and dying, fish are eating it and dying, and people are dying also as a result of it. It's going to become even more and more of a problem because a plastic bottle floating in the sea is one thing, but that plastic bottle, when it breaks down because of the sun and the salt and everything into tiny little bits, that's where it becomes a real problem for every living thing.
There's a very scary calculation from the scientists that say if we don't change course of overfishing and plastic pollution, in 2050 there will be more plastic than fish in the ocean.
Okay, that would be also a good reason to stop eating the fish, but the wrong reason, because we don't need to. We should.
It's a
not-
selfish
To give you
reason.
an
It's a
example,
very selfish
in
reason.
1985 to 1990, I wrote a series of articles about plastic in the ocean. And not only did all the scientists of that at the time disagree with it, but I had environmental groups, Greenpeace, Sierra Club, say, "Oh, why are you wasting our time on plastic pollution? That's not a problem. It's not going to be a problem." And so for at least 20 years, people just ignored this, even though the warnings were there. Charles Moore, back in 1985, he set up an organization just to address plastic pollution in the ocean. Everybody said, that guy's crazy. Why does he think that's going to... There's more important things than plastic in the ocean. That was the attitude at the time.
Have you heard about this cleanup project thing? I don't know. It was...
The construction of a boat.
Yeah, with a big catch of plastic.
It looks good. It brings out some plastic, but it probably addresses about 1% of the problem.
Okay.
That's
Not even.
We got to stop. We got to stop manufacturing
Yes.
this stuff.
That's it.
We got to
should
stop.
putting.
And recycling it is not the answer. It just throws it back in there.
Mm.
On that. And plastic comes from all sorts of things that people don't even understand. Norway did a research on this and found that like 30% of the plastic that was nanoplastics that's floating offshore came from automobile tires. Just going down the road, every time your car goes down the road, it's little microplastics goes off, gets washed down into the sea. The amount of automobile tire particles in the ocean is just absolutely incredible. It comes from the filters of cigarettes. It comes from all sorts of things that you don't even think about. It comes from the fact that they actually put plastic into hair products and cosmetics. All of this stuff ends up in the ocean. Everything you put down your toilet somewhere is going to get into the ocean somewhere. And those are the real problems. It's not your plastic bottle, although plastic shopping bags are a problem because turtles see them as jellyfish and then they eat them.
You know where it comes from too? It comes from polyester recycled clothing. You know, that's
Every
why
time you wash your clothes.
Sea Shepherd France doesn't use recycled polyester anymore, because we realize that when it's being washed in your washing machine, all that plastic goes back to the ocean.
Mm-hmm.
And it comes from sewage. Every time you take a dump, the plastic in that goes back to where it came from, you know. So
Plastic in your poop?
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't know that.
well, now they're a bottle of water in a plastic bottle of water has nanoplastics in it.
Nanoplastic, yeah.
Oh God, yeah.
Yeah, we're deep in the shit then talking about poop. But
Yeah.
are you also? Is it also a mission of yours to collect what you?
This is a side
or-
mission. I mean,
side
we
mission, yeah.
we do beach cleanings. But this is like, the thing is that it's never gonna be our core mission, because everyone does beach cleaning. I mean, everyone can do beach cleaning. There are many
it's
organizations
accessible.
that do beach cleaning. Anyone, I mean, when you are on a walk in the beach, you can have a bag with you and do beach cleaning. I mean, this is not where we are going to invest most of our energy and time and money.
But we have come a long way, because in 1982 I got arrested in Vancouver for cleaning the beach.
Really?
Yeah, we were raking it and sifting it. Yeah, I got arrested. The police came down and said, "Well, this is the job of the city workers to clean this, and you have no right. You have no right to be cleaning these beaches." And I said, "Well, they're not doing it. They're not sifting through the sand. It doesn't matter. You know, this is anyway." They dropped the charges.
Crazy.
But
You're so controversial, Paul.
Even when he does
Cleaning the
beach
beach.
cleaning. Funny.
Indeed, a shocking documentary was The Cove. Remember that one?
yeah, well, we were part of that. Yeah.
You were part of it. Is the problem solved? Like,
No.
no, they're
It's
still
even
doing
worse. It's worse.
it. It's worse.
They killed the dolphins. That whole massacre of dolphins in the Cove is caused by one thing: the aquarium industry wanting captive dolphins, because the dolphins are worth nothing to anybody unless they are sold to aquariums for about $250,000 a piece. So if the aquarium industry stops buying dolphins, that'll be the end to the slaughter of them. Because what they do is they drive in 100 dolphins.
Mm-hmm.
They take 3 or 4 of them and say, "Oh, these look like they'd be a good specimen to sell to the aquariums. Oh, yeah, kill the rest." And then they sell that dolphin meat to prisons or schools or whatever. But they're only really looking at those 4, because that's $1 million right there. 4 dolphins is $1 million.
Money always.
So it's people going to aquariums and buying a ticket to watch dolphins that is killing the dolphins in Taiji in Japan.
Would you say Japan is the worst in behavior
Well,
towards?
when it comes to whaling, they're not. Norway's worse than Japan, but they're
In
pretty
numbers,
bad.
in numbers, Norway is the worst.
And Iceland's worse in that it's targeting endangered fin whales. But now Japan wants to go after fin whales and blue whales. And
Blue
so-
whales too?
Yeah, they're looking at blue whales and humpback whales. And so Japan will, again, once more, be the worst country when it comes to that. But they're also one of the worst nations when it comes to fishing, like bluefin tuna and such.
Yeah.
And of course, you know, we always have to run into this problem. Anytime you go after, say, Japanese whaling, or, you know, you're a racist. Automatically you're a racist because you're opposing something from Japan. And which I actually find very funny, because the Japanese forbid the Ainu people from going whaling, and the Ainu people are the indigenous people of Japan. So if anybody's a racist, it's the Japanese telling the Ainu people they can't go whaling, but they can.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been looking about your organization, and there are many countries with many, I would say, entities. Thank you very much. Yes. And I've seen that recently there were a rift, and that you actually, Paul, were fired from Sea Shepherd, your own creation.
Well, there wasn't a rift. There was a hostile takeover of Sea Shepherd USA and Sea Shepherd Global. And I was dismissed for being too controversial and too confrontational, because they wanted to rebrand to be more mainstream, to be less controversial, and to partner with corporations and governments, basically to dilute everything that we stood for. But Sea Shepherd France, Sea Shepherd Brazil, Sea Shepherd UK didn't go along with that, and are still consistent with the original objectives. But it was done by a group of just a couple of, like 4 men, basically, who decided they wanted to control everything. I set Sea Shepherd up as a global movement, and that nobody was to really control it.
So you create that as a kind of a democratic.
But they wanted to take control and control everything in it. And they got themselves nice, comfortable jobs, secure positions and everything. These are people I've known for about 20 years. So they just literally stabbed me in the back to do that. Lamya and I were both on the global board of directors. We were both unlawfully dismissed, and that was actually proven in the Dutch court that our dismissal was illegal. And then they tried to sue us, saying that we had no right to use the name or the flag or anything. And they actually accused us of being parasites for taking advantage of something that I created. But they lost in that court case also. So we're still fighting that. But it was a takeover by just a small group of greedy individuals who decided that they want to control everything.
How does that make you feel? Because you've putting your life, your time, your resources, your energy, your everything, and then internal fight. You have a bigger fish.
Yeah, well,
to catch.
It was a betrayal, but you can't give up. You got to just carry on. So we're rebuilding and working to continue to do what we've always done, and we're not going to be demoralized by this, and we'll carry on.
I think actually what happened, it's weird for me saying that, but I think it's a good thing, because there was something going on like underground that we didn't see coming. These 4 people, they had planned this for a long time, and when they fired Paul, and a few months later they fired me because I was asking too many questions, and I refused to vote for Paul's dismissal. It kind of somehow it kind of gave us back some freedom. I mean, right now, Sea Shepherd France is doing things that we wouldn't have been doing if we were still involved with Global, and also it shows. I think it's I don't know, beyond the fact that Sea Shepherd and beyond Paul, it's a personal betrayal of Paul. Obviously, I mean, this is his life work, and also his trust and friendship. He considered these people as his friends, and that's what's very despicable about it, is that because they were in a position to do what they've done because he trusted them and considered them as friends, and thought that they were being truthful to the cause. So they played really, really, really dirty. So that's one thing. But beyond Paul's personal life and case, it's a betrayal of the thousands of people who consider Sea Shepherd as something unique that gives them hope, that inspire them. I mean, what we've been talking about since the beginning, like what makes Sea Shepherd so special and so inspiring to people, it's a direct heritage of the DNA that was set up by Paul, where people also recognize themselves and want to be part of. And what these people did, these 4 men, is that they took that away from people without letting them know, it's like, it's treachery. It's like it's not obvious. It's not in the light of the day. Of course, they didn't say publicly, hey, you know what? We are rebranding Sea Shepherd. Now, don't talk to us anymore about opposing whaling. We are going to focus on plastic things and non-controversial issues, because now we have big donors, we have Allianz, we have the Dutch lottery, and we have government partnership in Africa that we don't want to risk anymore. We have too much to lose. So all that crap, all that's conflict and confrontational approach that was set up by Paul, and that made really Sea Shepherd what it is, all this is behind us now. Of course, they didn't say that, right? No, they say that they remain truthful to the cause, and that's the reason why if you go on Global, I have a really hard time to call them Sea Shepherd Global, but they removed the name Global from their social media. Now they call themselves Sea Shepherd, which is even more confusing for people, right?
Oh yeah, because the Global would be the seat or the main.
It's the Dutch entity that manages the ships, and it was set up in 2013. It's not the mother of anything. It's just that they manage the ships. They manage the ships because there was a trial against Sea Shepherd USA by Japan, and in order to protect Sea Shepherd's assets, Sea Shepherd Global was created in 2013, and the ships were under the management.
How many ships?
4 now, I think. They scrapped the Bob Barker.
Yeah,
so
they scrapped all of my ships.
They have the Seagull, the Sam Simon, which is called Age of Union, the Ocean Warrior.
And they got this new one, the Bob Barker.
But that's SSCS, that's the US branch. But anyway, the thing is, they tried to make this, first of all, they tried to make it die out. They thought that people would just forget about what happened and forget about Paul, forget about what Sea Shepherd used to be, and that it would go unnoticed. And maybe they would have managed to do that if it wasn't Paul and if it wasn't Sea Shepherd France. That, I mean, we've been like resisting and fighting in the light of the day.
That's the core value.
Yeah,
to
like
resist
exposing what was happening.
and
I
to
mean, we
fight.
wouldn't stay silent on what was happening. And this didn't go right with their plans, right?
Okay.
But the thing is, so if you go on their social media, they don't talk about this issue at all because they don't want people to know. You know, the only ones talking about it, it's Paul, it's Sea Shepherd France, myself. But they try to bury this under the carpet, right? But what I wanted to say, I forgot.
So now the Sea Shepherd name, who does that belong to? Because Sea Shepherd France can still be Sea Shepherd France.
Yeah, they are in a very uncomfortable position because Sea Shepherd France is older than Sea Shepherd Global. I mean, I set up Sea Shepherd France in 2006.
Yes.
Right? Global has been set up in 2013. And there you have the crazy situation where these 4 guys from Global sue Sea Shepherd France in Paris to remove us the right to call ourselves Sea Shepherd when we were there before them, right? So they lost.
On what court? The French court?
Yeah, on the French court.
They also lost in the Dutch court.
They also lost in the Dutch court in the fact that they illegally dismissed Paul and myself.
Yeah.
I mean, they dismissed Paul without any meeting.
So are you being rehired then?
No, because the Dutch judge ruled that, yes, you've been illegally dismissed, but now you are in conflict with these guys, so you're not getting back.
So they have to pay you like compensation or something?
They have to pay us 25,000 euros in law fees. It's not compensation, it's in law fees. But we are appealing that decision because the main reason why we want to go back on the board is we want to have access to their financial data. We want to see how much money they spent.
You want transparency.
Exactly. And this was at a time where Sea Shepherd France was financing Global's campaigns, right? And we, both of us, were directors and we were not being put in the loop of what they were doing.
Yeah.
So we have the right to know that they own transparency to us, and not only to us. We're doing this for also the supporters. Every single person that has supported Sea Shepherd, that has donated to Sea Shepherd, has the right to know what they've done with the money.
It's very important.
They dismissed me at a secret meeting that I or Lamya were not invited to. There was no discussion. They made the vote amongst themselves. And a month later, I get an email saying, "You're dismissed." That was it. And they've never responded to anything since September 1st, night of 2022. It's just, they seized all communication.
Very childish.
And when they lost the court case in France and had to pay the damages, they didn't tell their supporters. There's nothing on their social networks. They didn't admit to losing anything. Their whole attitude is that just don't say anything and it'll all go away. You cannot go to a Sea Shepherd Australia or Global or Germany. You cannot go to their sites and leave a comment because they'll delete it and block you. Sea Shepherd Germany doesn't even allow comments. They just cut off all comments. So they've censored anything. I've been blocked from emails and social networks for all of these, Sea Shepherd Australia and New Zealand and whatever. And so, this is their whole way of dealing with it. That's no transparency. Let's keep it all in the dark, and it'll all go away. In fact, that's what they say. If we say nothing, it'll all just go away.
How do you operate now then, Paul? Like I've heard you've created a new organization or something.
Outside of France and Brazil, it's the Captain Paul Watson Foundation.
Yeah. And
we have 2 ships, and France has 1 vessel now and going to get another one. And so Brazil's doing campaigns to protect the Amazon and also offshore of Brazil. We're struggling on that, but we have to really start at the bottom again and rebuild, because one of the things that over the years, for instance, people leave bequests, and they left it because of me and just a couple months before I was dismissed, Sea Shepherd USA got a $5 million bequest, and they didn't even tell me about it. But fortunately, a lot of our big supporters contacted me and said, "What's going on?" And now they're supporting us directly. People like John Paul DeJoria and Steve Wynn and people like this who, so because of them, I was able to get these the ships and their support.
Yeah.
And I'm finding as people find out about it, then they're supporting us. But the problem is not only did they take the ships and the asset, they took the list of all of the supporters, everything, and there's no way for us to contact them
That's
and that.
also
So people have to contact us and
Yeah.
that. I get a call, say, well, what happened? And I tell them, I say, well, this is ridiculous. And then then I got their support.
I actually didn't myself until this week. I've heard that.
You won't know about it by looking at Sea Shepherd Switzerland, for example, because unfortunately Sea Shepherd Switzerland is with Global, and they never answered Paul's messages. They just
Switzerland simply cut me
Wow.
off. No emails, no response, nothing. As far as Sea Shepherd Switzerland's concerned, I don't exist.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, in Switzerland, we are not known to be brave, and we like to hide stuff, with the bank secrecy and stuff. So I'm not surprised that there are cowards there in that field.
They're not neutral though. They've taken sides.
Yeah,
Yes,
absolutely.
yes, they've
No, we
taken
do
sides.
take side, doing nothing to or doing what
Yeah.
we do. And in France, can you still operate as you were operating?
we
or what?
operate even better because we don't support Global financially anymore. I mean, we never had
Oh.
any obligation to support them. The thing is, people got worried for Sea Shepherd France because people had the idea that we were getting money from Global when it was the other way around.
Okay.
We never needed Global.
for
We
you.
existed years before Global was set up. So we are completely independent. And we are really a big stone in their shoe because we have the right on the name and the logo. And we are strong enough to lead our own campaigns. We even help finance Sea Shepherd Brazil's campaigns because when Sea Shepherd Brazil sided with Paul, Global that was helping them finance their Pink Dolphin campaign, they cut the funds.
Well,
So it's
mafia tactics.
so Natalie from Sea Shepherd Brazil told me, well, Alex Cornelissen just cut the funds and I can't do the campaign anymore. So Sea Shepherd France took the lead and we financed their campaign.
But you were very high placed. So were there red flags that you could see before it actually happened?
Well, it was my fault. I trusted these people. I shouldn't have.
Yeah, well-
trust is, I would, because if you're human and you were talking about connection, if you start to distrust people firsthand, then I don't think life will lead you very far.
Yeah.
Now, so I'm against to say, oh, I should not have trust. You should have trust, but you should have maybe be more careful.
Yeah, I
trust
think-
is not a bad thing, and we should.
No, it's not. But I mean, I think trust is something that has to be won and deserved. The thing is, I mean, Paul is a very, very trusting person, and he has the tendency to put his trust in people he shouldn't. And sometimes it's people who I can see coming from far, and I'm like, how can you trust these people? But I mean, to be fair, with these four, it was hard to see them coming, and I didn't see them coming either, because again, you have to think that these are people that started from scratch. I mean, Paul mentored them from the very beginning. I mean, Alex started as a cook, Peter started as a deckhand. They had no experience whatsoever. It's Paul that trusted them and put them in the position they are, and they have like a unique
You trained them.
opportunity.
Yeah.
Yeah, completely. And I mean, we were friends. I mean, we were campaigning together. We were seeing each other. I mean, it was very hard to imagine that they would be doing such a thing, you know?
What is the fundamental difference between what they now probably are doing and what you see you should do to continue?
They've abandoned our primary principle of aggressive nonviolence. They decided that they don't want to be confrontational. They don't want to be controversial. They decided that where they need to go is complicity and cooperation with corporations and with governments, and that's how they've rebranded themselves.
Are they collaborating with these corporations?
Oh,
or-
yeah.
Like who?
They're in partnership with Allianz Insurance Company, with the Dutch Postal Code Lottery, with Lloyd's of London, with these various African nations like Liberia and Namibia. So they're all the Mexican government's another one. So they're basically greenwashing those governments because those governments can say, look, we're doing something about the problem. We got Sea Shepherd working with us.
If they do, that's not a problem.
No, but you
do
know,
they?
yeah, that's what I was going to say. The problem is not about collaborating with government. I mean, Sea Shepherd France, we have some projects with the French government, but on the other side, if we see that they are bullshitting or they are doing things that are wrong, we're gonna go after them and publicly go after them and bring them in court. You know, it's about being independent. You know. So if there is for a specific topic an interest to be more effective by working with the government on that specific topic, then let's do it. But remain free of your freedom. You keep your freedom of speech, your freedom of action, and it's not because you're doing this on this specific topic that is meaningful to work with the government that you're not gonna tackle other issues that are gonna bother the government. You know, and you're not gonna have your communication read proof by the government
or dilute your values.
Exactly, and that's what is happening. And regarding big donors, the thing is, Sea Shepherd Global and Alex Cornelissen, for example, he told me that what's more important is big donors. So like the Dutch Lottery or Allianz. And this is a recipe for a disaster. I mean, this is a recipe for lack of a loss of freedom. For Sea Shepherd France, 99.8% of our fundings come from Mr. and Mrs. Everyone. You know, so these are small donations, like people who give 10, 15, 20 euros per month. And this is
that's how you get free.
And this is priceless. This is priceless because we can do whatever we want. We don't rely on one big donor that will pressure us or that's going to say, hey, that campaign you want to do, you know, it's too controversial. I don't want to have my image linked to that. So if you want the next million, you better cut off that, you know, and that's where they put their position in.
One of the most troubling partnerships is with the Israeli Yamosek security company. They hire people from Yamosek to be on the boats as campaign leaders. These guys they're hiring are either ex or current IDF soldiers. And
genocidal maniacs, you mean?
Well, one of them actually had to leave the ship so he could go back to Palestine, where he posted about shooting Palestinians, and now he's back on the ship again in charge of a campaign. So they have a partnership with the Israeli security firm Yamosek, and basically the Yamosek is running Sea Shepherd campaigns off of Africa. And I think that's probably the most troubling partnership of all. It is,
and he put a dirty image on the name Sea Shepherd, if that were to be known. So I would say that they should give it back and change their name.
That's also the reason why we are suing them in Amsterdam, because we want to have all the documents to see how much and since when they've been working with Yamosek.
We got the tax returns for Sea Shepherd USA this year. They paid $600,000 to the Yamosek security firm. $600,000. They also, what they did was they set up Sea Shepherd Israel. And the guy who's the official representative for Sea Shepherd Israel is an IDF soldier, who not only is he an IDF soldier, but on his social networks posted how we need to basically commit genocide on the Palestinian people. These people are animals. We have to get rid of them. This is our land. And this is the guy who's officially representing Sea Shepherd.
Yeah, but that Sea Shepherd Israel chapter, I don't think it went anywhere. I don't think it became official. I think
it was official for a while, but then I think it's very quiet now.
Yeah, I think it died out.
Bad look.
Yeah, it died out. That Sea Shepherd Israel is a non-issue. The big issue is that guy is still on Sea Shepherd campaigns, and that Sea Shepherd Global, I'm gonna call them, is hiring a private military agency with donation money. And this is one thing on that issue, but also with Austral Fisheries. What they're doing with Austral Fisheries.
What is Austral Fisheries?
Austral Fisheries is a fishing company, industrial fishing company that goes after
Chilean
sea bass in Antarctica, and they are half owned by a Japanese whaling company. And Sea Shepherd Australia, Jeff Hansen, the director of Sea Shepherd Australia, is making public statements with the CEO of Austral Fisheries saying that they share the same vision on sustainable fishing. which is absolutely
Nothing
crazy.
sustainable
It's
about
it's mind
Patagonia
blowing. I mean,
toothfish.
it's crazy, isn't it? So on Sea Shepherd France, I posted a few days ago an article to explain to people why Sea Shepherd Global is completely silent on the new inauguration of the biggest whaling ship ever created.
Are we still making those?
The Kange Maru? Huh?
Are we still building this ship?
They just launched one last week.
They just launched it 10 days ago, and it's a big and terrifying news for whales, right? This is the biggest whaling ship ever built, and Sea Shepherd Global is completely silent on it.
And that's supposed to be the core of the action.
But they
Sea Shepherd action.
They posted something a few days after that, saying that whaling is not the biggest threat on whales anymore. That it's more plastic and climate change and everything, and that's what they are focusing on. But I mean, come on, cut the crap, you know? I mean, you cannot just stay silent on a whaling vessel that is going to target endangered whales by saying, oh, but plastic, you know, and bycatch is killing more whales than harpoons. So it's just it's an untenable situation for them.
It's a travesty of what you intended to build.
What they have to do is to maintain the illusion that they're a direct action organization without actually being a direct action organization.
Yeah. Because they still, why would they do that? Because they still get the money for a lot of donors? Or
They want people who supported us for decades. They want their support. So they have to give them the impression, oh, we haven't changed at all. But they haven't done anything other than they've gone down to the Southern Ocean twice to do this krill campaign. They called it Antarctic Defense Project. But they didn't do anything other. They took pictures, and then they came back.
Fostering.
Yeah, we took pictures and said, "Oh, we documented what they're doing." And I'm going, Greenpeace did that in 2018. National Geographic did that in 2018. I mean, what'd you do? You know? I said, we already have that stuff. I mean, Greenpeace is actually doing what Greenpeace does, and that's fine. But that was never Sea Shepherd. Sea Shepherd shouldn't be Greenpeace.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting when you look at their socials, when they post things about what they do, mainly on plastic, if you pay attention. And people are like, oh, I love to watch you guys on Discovery, on Whale Wars. Why don't you do that again? You know, these are people who heard about Sea Shepherd on Whale Wars, and they still have that image in mind, and that's why they keep following them and they support them.
So what would you advocate for those who, I guess, are giving money to Sea Shepherd Global? Is that how it works? Like the Swiss people, who they are giving the money to Sea Shepherd Switzerland? Everywhere.
If you give money to Sea Shepherd Switzerland,
what people should do to really support the core missions that you ever took?
Sea Shepherd, if they're supporters in Switzerland, they should support Sea Shepherd France.
Sea Shepherd Switzerland is part of Global. So the money you send to Sea Shepherd Switzerland is sent to Global, is used for Global. Okay. And Global has spent a lot of money in lawsuits against us. So that's, to give you an idea.
Okay. But is that the same for what country is directly linked to Global then?
It's easier.
And who is independent?
It's easier to say, like, to list the countries that are not linked to Global, which are France, Brazil, and UK. UK changed their name to CPWF, Captain Paul Watson Foundation.
Okay.
So these are the,
these three.
Yeah. The rest, the Sea Shepherd Germany, Switzerland.
Sea Shepherd Uruguay changed their name too.
Oh, they did? Yeah, but Uruguay is maybe a bit far from here.
Yeah,
but
it's good to know because internet reach in English.
That's true.
Reach far.
Yeah. And Brazil is far too.
So if you give to Switzerland, for instance, for Swiss, give it to France, or give it directly to Paul Watson Foundation.
Yeah, but I think that Switzerland is more closer to France, should support what France is doing.
Yeah.
And Sea Shepherd France is also supporting the CPWF. So.
Okay. What's going forward now?
Well, right now we're about to go to Iceland to block Icelandic whaling operations there. We're making plans to go after the Japanese whaling vessel, the Kange Maru. Sea Shepherd France is involved with protecting turtles and Mayotte, also protecting the Iberian population of orcas. We're opposing the super trawlers, and numerous campaigns that are carrying on in the traditional way that we've always approached it.
That's great to know. And how can people help? We understood that we could help you financially. Are there other way to help you? I've heard people saying, I would dream, because it's sometimes it's a bit sexy, your video. It's very dangerous, and probably I'm seasick. So 5 minutes after I would be in the boat, I would leave the boat. But for some people, they probably wish to, I don't know, meet you or become crew. Is that possible?
Oh, yeah,
How many people do you hire?
Well, we don't really hire a lot, but we do take on volunteers to crew.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For missions.
Yeah, they can apply online on Sea Shepherd France or the Captain Paul Watson Foundation. We also have a care center in Brittany with the wildlife, where we have volunteers helping out,
France, yeah.
and where we can also shelter volunteers, and then I mean, that's by being involved with us.
Yeah.
But there is also so many things that people can do on their own, spread the word, I love it when we have like students or even kids, doing like a presentation on the campaigns we do, and the issues that are facing the ocean.
Absolutely.
We have all kinds of people helping us. Like we have lawyers, we have artists, we have teachers. As Paul said earlier, like what do you like to do? What are you the best at? And see how you can put that into fruition for the movement. Yeah,
I'm very hopeful for the new generation, because I think, and we've witnessed that with the actual protestation on campus for the Gaza genocide, the Palestinian genocide. The young people are starting to realize that asking gently leads to nowhere, because the law only applies, as we discussed earlier, when it suits the powerful, and that the system is rigged. I mean, probably in your youth, you probably also noticed that, maybe even earlier than others, but I really think now they are not naive anymore. They don't bend to the first threats they receive. They see things for what they are. And I think your way of action is really pioneered and very inspiring for them, because they could see it exists and it's sustainable, and that's the way forward.
I think one of the differences between my generation and the new generation is I'm a child of the 50s, 60s, and 70s, which was probably the most materially wealthy and freest time in human history. It'll never come again because there's too many people and not enough resources. But it was also the freest thing. I mean, we could do things in the 70s and the 80s even that we just can't do anymore because of the restrictions.
That's
and
true.
that. Now, the problem here today for the younger generation is they don't have any choice. They either have to resist this, or else they're going to have to live with it. And it's going to be very difficult because they got to deal with climate change, species extinctions, pollutions, things which, things in war, things that we didn't have to deal with. So I haven't seen this kind of revival, for instance, on the war thing since the 60s and the Vietnam War. That's never happened. So what's happening right now is really a revelation of that people are just not going to sit back and take this. Exactly. I mean, you cannot blatantly commit genocide in front of everybody in the world and expect to get away with it. But that seems to be the attitude, is that, well, we can do whatever we want, and people are just going to have to accept it or else. And, of course, then they'll try to use every trick in the book to try and say, well, this is anti-Semitism or whatever. I thought a couple of days ago, I thought it was very revealing, is that all the American politicians are on there saying, all these demonstrations at the university, they're funded by the Russians. They're funded by anti-Semitic groups. They're funded by
Hamas. Yeah, well, they'll
you know what they found out? You know who was funding them?
No.
The heiress to the Levi Strauss family, a Jewish American woman who has been funding these things because she says it's genocide.
Oh, wow.
So, but they, of course, they want to try and cover that up
because
because it doesn't fit into their
Inconvenient
narrative.
truth, indeed. So it's great that you remind us that the fight also starts in the ocean. As you say, everything is linked also to that. We're from there. We at one point we came out of the ocean.
It all sums up. The ocean dies, we die. We don't live on this planet with a dead ocean.
Yeah. Last question is about and to conclude this very rich conversation, is about the inspiration and the motivation you have every morning. Why do you do what you do, basically? Who starts?
I don't know.
Some people say, well, do you ever get depressed or pessimistic and everything? And I don't. And the reason being is that it goes back many, many years ago. In 1973, I was a volunteer medic for the American Indian movement during the occupation of Wounded Knee in South Dakota. And we were surrounded by U.S. government agents who were shooting at us. They killed 2, wounded 46. I went to Russell Means, who was the head of the American Indian movement, and I said, look, Russell, we don't have any chance of winning here. We're outnumbered. The odds are against us. We simply cannot win this battle. Why are we here? And what he told me has stayed with me all my life. He said, well, we're not concerned about the odds against us. We're not concerned about winning or losing. We're here because this is the right place to be, the right time to do it, and the right thing to do. Don't worry about the future. You have no power in the future. All of your power is today, in the present. What you do today will define what the future will be. So don't even give any thought to the future because that's out of your control. But you have absolute control on what you do today, and that will make the difference.
That's wise. And it echoes what you said earlier about your very tense operation where you felt like you would be nowhere but there, even though that was life-threatening.
Yeah, I think it's important to disconnect yourself from the results, about like the pessimistic, optimistic thing. Like people sometimes ask me, are you optimistic for the future? And it's not the point, as Paul said, it's not the point. When you say what makes you wake up in the morning and do what you do, it's just, it doesn't cross my mind not to do it. It's like, I mean, there is one thing that is very important to me is when I'm on my deathbed, how you call that in English?
Yeah.
And I look back on my life, I don't want to feel that I didn't do everything I could to change the course of things. And I actually have the opposite thing, which I'm working on. It's like I had the tendency over the past years to really take on my shoulders the huge impossible weight to carry, that burden of saving the world, like feeling like I have to do this if I want to have like a chance to save the world, and this is like a lot. And I tend to realize that if I want to last long on this, I have to do my part, and not feel too stressed about the outcome and the result, because in the end of the day, I don't carry on my shoulder the fate, the destiny of the world. What I'm responsible for, it's what I have done with my life. Have I played my part? And I'm trying to do the best to play my part. And that's good enough, I think. That's more than that. It's essential. It's essential. And hopefully, when I look back, I won't have any regrets. That's priceless. That's what keeps me going.
Really inspiring. Is there something you want to discuss that you've never been asked by journalists, or that something is that you feel is missing from the conversation?
Well, I think we covered a lot, but generally mainstream journalists don't ask you anything of relevance, really.
That's true, and that's also part of the reason why I'm here. Beside the privilege to interview people like you with such an experience and such courage. So I would like to thank you for that.
Thank you.
Most of all,
for inviting us.
Yeah, the mainstream journalists are questions. Well, what's Pamela Anderson really like?
Oh, come on.
Or what's Bridget Bardot? Do you know her? I mean, these are the kind of questions you get from the mainstream journalists.
That's like the lamest thing.
No, but that's what you get.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, because they have a very short time and they need to sell. Always the same.
But
problem.
I'll tell you though, one of the things, they're very important to have people like that, because when they had all these dolphins and beluga whales, orcas that were captured in Russia, and we wanted to get Putin to release them. I mean, he's not going to listen to us. I actually wrote a speech to give to the Russian government and everything. But they're not going to listen to me. So I put that speech into Pamela Anderson's hands, sent her to Russia, and she got them released.
It worked.
Oh yeah, because Putin liked Pamela Anderson. It just came right down.
Why not?
When Bridget Bardot went to the ice floes off of Newfoundland and posed cheek to cheek with a baby seal, guaranteed the cover of every major magazine in the world.
I remember
so
that.
That's a valuable lesson.
Yeah.
That the media the mainstream media only is concerned with 4 things: sex, scandal, violence, and celebrity.
So
If you don't have one of those elements, you don't have a story. So you have to incorporate those elements into this. And you got to give them what they want.
Yeah.
What they want is sex, scandal, violence, and celebrity.
Or you can quit the mainstream media and go to the fringe media, like here, and have meaningful and
you have to do both.
found-
You have to
yeah,
do
you have
both.
to do both.
But if you want to get out to that
That's
mainstream,
true.
you have to do that. You know, years ago, I was leading a campaign to protect wolves in northern British Columbia and Yukon. And perfect story. I mean, they had them shooting wolves from the helicopter, threatening to shoot us. Well, got the violence. We found the environment minister was taking bribes from a big game organization. Scandal. So I recruited Bo Derek as our spokesperson. That gave us sex and celebrity. And at that press conference, which is packed, a reporter said, "What does Bo Derek know about wolves? I mean, that, you know, it's stupid having her as your spokesperson." I said, "That's not the point. If I had the best wolf biologist in the world, it'd be an empty room. But this is going to be your front page story tomorrow in your newspaper tomorrow. And you know what? There's not a damn thing you can do about it, is it?" And that's exactly where it was. See, that's controlling all 4 elements of that story. So if you want to get the media, the mainstream media, to get your story across, you got to use those 4 elements.
And that's part of also your strategy, because one of your work is to inform people and give, to make people conscious.
Yeah.
Because even if I say I'm informed, you taught me a lot of stuff today that I didn't know at all. So that's also very valuable.
In 2006, I went to all the networks in the U.S. and I said, "Look, the biggest show on Discovery right now is a bunch of guys going up to the Bering Sea in a cold, remote area to catch crabs on Deadliest Catch. I can give you a show of men and women going to a colder, more remote area to save whales. It has to be more compelling than catching crabs every week." And Discovery Animal Planet said, okay, it became their #1 show on the network on that, because it gave us, it was drama. It was, it had all of that stuff that they wanted to make a TV show. And even, I had to deal with the thing because they're always trying to make it into more than, I wanted education. They wanted
Drama.
Drama.
They like drama.
So,
That works.
Even they promoted it by saying it's not about whales, it's about people. I gotta get out of here. But that's the way they were pushing it.
It has success now. There were lots of people.
Oh yeah,
watching,
so that in fact is what made Sea Shepherd so bloody big.
Yeah.
And that's what was taken advantage of by this small group of people. Oh, look, we got a lot of money now. We got a lot of support. Hey, I got a nice job. I'm a very
Back to
secure
the 4.
position. And you're threatening my position because you might do something too controversial and we're going to lose support because of that.
That's not the first time it happened. Unfortunately, it's not going to be the last time it happens.
No, it's quite classical.
It's classical.
It's a classic scenario. What's not classic about it is that within the movement you have a strong resistance and outspoken. So that's different.
So I think you have every tool and every value and courage to continue the work you're doing. You created a church, but maybe it was fake news, and the word was diversity.
We have to leave in 5 minutes.
In 5 minutes.
No, I
It's gonna
did.
be late.
Diversity, interdependency, and I don't remember the last one. Love.
In 2020, I established the Church of Biocentrism. And it's a scientific-based thing. It's not a religion.
Not like a dogmatic.
It's not religious.
church.
It's not religious.
What it does is promote the fact that all religions are anthropocentric. It's all about us. We're #1. We're all important. The Church of Biocentrism says we're part of everything. We have to live in harmony with other species. And under the 3 laws of ecology, the law of diversity, the law of interdependence, the law of finite resources. And
finite resources.
Yeah,
yes.
because
of course,
what happens
finite.
is when
That's
you
it.
diminish
We're gonna
diversity and interdependence, because of destruction of resources, it leads to ecological collapse. So really, it's a church of biocentrism is about human survival. If we're going to survive on this planet, we have to live in harmony and understand how important all these other species are to us. We don't live in a world without bees. We don't live in a world without whales. We have to understand that. So it's not really a church in the classical sense. But in the United States, if you set up a church, you get all sorts of tax breaks and everything like that.
The thing is that mix, between a religion and spirituality. And the thing is, there is a bigger backlash of religions for many good reasons in the modern world. But the problem is that we also throw out spirituality,
Yes,
which
completely.
is that connection that I was talking
Yeah.
about with the living
We don't
world.
have a common story
And
anymore.
it created a big void within the
Absolutely.
heart of
And then
human
we're
beings.
scared.
And we are spiritual beings, and it doesn't have to be about religion. It has nothing to do with religion, actually. And sometimes it's even the opposites of religion. But spirituality, the connection with the living world, that's what mandatory, and that's what we are lacking today as a species, I think.
I'll join in, and I'm hoping a lot of people join in. Don't forget that we are church here, so if you want to bring people, we have spaces. So thank you so very, very, very much for everything that you do, and I'm hoping everything will be going the right direction in the future. You can count on me if you need to I don't know, interview people or anything you need. I'm here also
Thank
to
you.
support your action.
Thank
Thank you very much
Thank you
again.
for
Well,
playing
thank
your
you.
part too.
See you next time. Bye.
Bye.
What time do we have to go right now?
We have to go right now.